The Christmas tree was very, very tall. It was so tall that it almost touched the ceiling. It was 12 feet high, taller than two grown men standing on each other's shoulders. The tree did not come from a normal place. It came from a special farm far away in Oregon, where trees were grown just for rich people who wanted the best ones. The tree was covered in decorations. The ornaments were shiny and colorful. Some were gold. Some were silver. Some were made of glass. Some had tiny diamonds in them. My dad paid a lot of money for them. In fact, the ornaments on that tree cost more than many people pay to live in their homes for a whole month. The Locksley family house looked perfect, like a picture in a magazine. Green garlands were wrapped around every staircase and every railing. Red ribbons were tied neatly in bows. Outside the house, bright white lights covered the walls, the trees, and even the driveway. A professional company came to set them up. Inside, people walked around carrying trays of food and drinks. They were not family members. They were paid workers. They served fancy food with names I could barely pronounce. They served champagne in thin glasses. It felt like we were having a big fancy party instead of a simple family dinner. That was how my father liked everything. Big, expensive, impossible to ignore. I stood near the fireplace, holding a glass of scotch. The fire was warm, but I still felt cold inside. I did not really want to drink the scotch, but holding it gave me something to do with my hands. I took small sips and watched my family from across the room. Every year, they did the same things. They stood in the same places. They told the same stories. They laughed at the same jokes. It was like watching a play I had already seen many times before. My brother Soren stood near the bar. He always stood near the bar. He liked being the center of attention. He was surrounded by cousins, uncles, and friends of the family. He spoke loudly so everyone could hear him. He told stories about his business. He talked about new car dealerships, new buildings, and big numbers. He talked about how Locksley Motors was growing bigger and bigger every year. 7 locations now, he said proudly. And 3 more coming soon. People nodded. People smiled. People said things like amazing and so impressive. My mother floated around the room like a friendly ghost. She smiled at everyone. She made sure every glass was full. She laughed at every joke, even the bad ones. She made sure everyone felt important. And then there was my dad. My dad was standing in the middle of the room. He was watching everyone. He kept looking at me. I could tell he was planning something. He liked moments like this. He liked having an audience. Finally, he cleared his throat loudly. "I want to make a toast," he said, raising his glass high. The room became quiet right away. Conversation stopped. Music faded into the background. Everyone turned to look at him. Thorian Locksley Sr. did not need to ask for attention. He took it naturally. When he spoke, people listened. It was like he was born with that power. "To my family," he said. "To tradition. To the Locksley name and everything it stands for." He lifted his glass towards Soren. "And to my son Soren," he said proudly. He took the business I built and turned it into something incredible. 7 dealerships. 200 employees. The largest car business in this whole region. People clapped loudly. Some whistled. Soren smiled and nodded like he was shy, even though he loved the attention. He had practiced that look since he was 16 years old. Then my dad's eyes moved toward me. The smile faded from his face. His voice became cold. "And then there's Zevrian," he said. He said my name slowly like it tasted bad. "The disappointment of the family," he continued. "Your brother built a business. You built nothing. You are 35 years old. What do you have to show for it?" My chest felt tight. Some consulting jobs no one understands. An apartment instead of a house. No wife. No children. No legacy. The room went silent. Not the quiet from before. This was a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Some people looked down at their shoes. Some pretended to check their phones. A few smirked. My mom suddenly became very interested in fixing a napkin on the table. Soren lifted his glass and smiled at me in a fake, friendly way. "Don't worry, little brother," he said. "Not everyone can be successful." I took another sip of my scotch. It burned my throat. I let the feeling sit in my chest. "Okay," I said softly. Then I took out my phone. My hands were steady. I typed a message to Lyra Eston. She was my main contact at First Continental Bank. I wrote, "Remove the Locksley Motors credit guarantee. All of it. $4.2 million. Effective immediately." Less than 30 seconds later, she replied, "Confirmed. Guarantee withdrawn. The bank will notify them within the hour." I put my phone back in my pocket. Around me, the party continued. People laughed again. Someone turned the music up. Gifts sat under the tree in expensive wrapping paper. Everything looked perfect. Then my dad's phone rang. He frowned. The number was not saved. "I need to take this," he muttered, walking into the hallway. Through the glass doors, I watched his face change. Annoyed, confused, afraid. I picked up a wrapped gift and shook it gently, pretending to guess what was inside. This Christmas was going to be different. In the Locksley family, there was only one path in life. My grandfather started Locksley Motors in 1962. He had one small car lot and a few old cars. He worked hard every day. My father grew it bigger. By the time I was born, there were 3 locations. Soren was trained from the time he was little to take over. He walked the car lot like it was his playground. Everyone thought I would do the same. But I was different. Soren liked talking. I liked thinking. Soren liked selling. I liked understanding. I liked numbers. I liked patterns. I liked seeing things others missed. When I was 14, I told my dad I did not want to work at the dealership anymore. "What is wrong with you?" he asked. "This is your future." "Maybe I want a different future," I said. He did not understand. After that, I became disappointed. I studied finance. I moved away. I worked in banking. "You'll be back," my dad said. I never went back. I succeeded quietly. I built my life without them. And that is why when my dad finally called me for help, I almost laughed. Because the son he thought was nothing was holding everything together. My father had spent 20 years telling me that my work was not important. He always said I was just playing with numbers and spreadsheets. He said it was not a real job, that I should have chosen something practical, like working at the family car dealership. I tried to ignore his words and do my work anyway, but they hurt more than I could say. I wanted him to be proud of me, but he had spent so long disappointed in me that I did not know if he ever could be. One day, out of the blue, my father called me. He sounded serious and a little worried. He asked me about banks. "Do you know anyone in banking?" he said. I paused before answering. I could have said no, or I could have said maybe. I chose. I might know someone. Let me look into it. I did not tell him the truth. I did not tell him that I didn't just know someone in banking. I was someone in banking. I ran a company called Blackstone Ridge Partners. We had worked with almost every big bank in the Midwest. Our company had strong relationships with these banks. But even more important, I personally had enough money to promise the bank that a loan would be safe. If the bank needed a guarantee, I could provide it. I could promise that the money would be paid back, even if something went wrong. That was exactly what Locksley Motors, my brother Soren's company, needed. I made a decision. Looking back, it was not a smart business decision. It was not a decision made just for profit or numbers. It was a decision made because a part of me wanted approval. A small, stubborn, childlike part of me wanted my father to finally see me as someone important. I personally guaranteed a $4.2 million credit line for Locksley Motors through First Continental Bank. I used my own money as the guarantee. I structured the deal through 3 different companies so that no one could trace it back to me. To my family, it looked like some anonymous investor with deep pockets had decided to help the dealership. No one knew it was me. No one had any idea that I was the one who had saved the company from a financial problem. Because of that credit line, Soren could buy more dealerships. Locksley Motors expanded from 5 locations to 7. My father was proud of Soren, and he spoke about it openly. He gave interviews and praised Soren's smart business skills. He spoke about the family's legacy in the car business. But he never thanked me. He never said my name. He never realized that the success he celebrated was built on my help. And I told myself that was okay. I told myself I didn't need him to know. I told myself I was helping because it was a good investment, because the dealership would generate returns, because business was business and family feelings should not matter. But the truth was simpler and sadder. I still wanted my father to be proud of me. I believed, in a small, foolish way, that if I helped enough, if I gave enough, if I made their success possible, one day they would see me differently. One day, the disappointment they felt toward me would disappear. One day, they would look at me the way they looked at Soren, with pride, with respect, with love. 3 years passed. 3 years of silently helping the family business while being ignored. 3 years of guaranteeing a $4.2 million credit line, watching Soren expand the company, listening to my father praise Soren's intelligence and skill, while I remained invisible. Then came Christmas. My father stood in his mansion, decorated for the holidays, with the family all around him. He called me the family disappointment in front of 40 relatives. He raised a glass to Soren and ignored me completely. He had no idea that the empire he was praising was built on the foundation I had provided. He never knew, and he never cared to know. Some lessons take a long time to learn. That Christmas, my father was on the phone for 20 minutes. Through the frosted glass doors of the study, we could all see him pacing back and forth, waving his hands, his face turning bright red and darker red, showing anger and stress. Mom tried to keep the holiday party going. "Who wants to start opening gifts?" she asked. But her voice was tense, and everyone kept glancing toward the study doors. Soren had his phone out too. He was frowning as he looked at a series of notifications. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered to his wife. "The CFO is texting me about some credit issue." I sat with my drink and said nothing. When my father finally emerged from the study, he looked 10 years older. His face was pale, his hands trembling. His usual commanding presence, the one that filled every room, had completely collapsed. "Soren," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk now." They disappeared into the study together, and the rest of the family stood around the untouched presents, listening to raised voices leaking through the thick oak doors. "The entire credit line is being called," I heard my father say. "You can't just withdraw a guarantee without warning." He continued, 14.2 million. "Soren, we have 60 days to find replacement funding, or the bank freezes our accounts." Aunt Celine sidled up next to me. "What do you suppose that's about?" she asked. I shrugged. "Business stuff, I imagine." "I wouldn't know anything about it," I said. She gave me a strange look, but didn't press further. After all, everyone knew Zevrian, the family disappointment, was not supposed to know anything about business. The week after Christmas was total chaos for Loxley Motors. Without the $4.2 million guarantee, First Continental Bank began reviewing the entire lending relationship. The dealership's operating line, the cash they used for daily expenses, payroll, and inventory, was suddenly under scrutiny. The expansion loans that had funded the 6th and 7th locations were being examined for possible acceleration clauses, which could force the dealership to repay the money immediately. Soren called me on December 28th. It was the first time he had spoken to me directly in over a year. "Zevrian," he said, "Dad says you helped us find that credit guarantee a few years back. Do you still have contacts at the bank? We need to understand what's happening." I said mildly, "I thought I built nothing. Why would I have useful banking contacts?" He stopped and took a deep breath. I could hear stress in his voice, the sound of Soren Loxley not being in control. "Look, I'm sorry about what Dad said. You know how he gets, but this is serious. The business could be in real trouble." 60 days is not much time," I replied. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," and hung up before he could respond. My father called on New Year's Eve. I let the call go to voicemail. "Zevrian, this is your father. I don't know what's going on with the bank, but I need you to call whoever you know over there and fix this. The dealership, our family's legacy, is at stake. Call me back." No apology, no acknowledgement of what he had said at Christmas. Just a command delivered with the expectation that I would comply, because I was his son. I saved the voicemail. I added it to a collection I had been keeping for years. Evidence of a relationship built on one-way demands and conditional love. Mom called on January 3rd. Her voice was softer, more pleading. "Zevrian, sweetheart, please call us back. Your father is very stressed. The business situation is complicated. Whatever you can do to help, we'd appreciate it. You've always been good with numbers. Maybe you could look at the books, find a solution." Good with numbers. The same skill set she had once dismissed as useless when I chose finance over the dealership. The same talent she ignored every time Soren's sales abilities were praised at family dinners. I deleted the voicemail without responding. 2 weeks passed. The calls kept coming, from my father, from my mother, from Soren, and from family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect, to catch up, to understand what had happened. I ignored every call, every message, reading them only with detached interest. There was a certain poetry in it. The family that had dismissed me for decades was now desperate for my attention. On January 15th, my father showed up at my apartment. He had driven 4 hours from home, something he had never done before. He looked terrible. Never in my 12 years of living in Chicago had he visited me. He was unshaven, exhausted, and wearing a wrinkled polo shirt under a winter coat that wasn't properly fastened. Thorian Loxley Sr. never looked anything less than perfectly put together. The man at my door was a stranger wearing my father's face. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him walk in. He stopped in the foyer, looking around with unconcealed shock. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, the original artwork on the walls, the pieces I had collected over years of traveling to auctions and galleries, the custom furniture, the chef's kitchen. All of it seemed to overwhelm him. He could not finish his sentence. It was not what he had expected from the family disappointment. "We're losing everything," he said. "The bank is calling our loans. We have 45 days to find $4.2 million in new guarantees, or they freeze our accounts. We can't make payroll. We can't buy inventory." Soren was talking about bankruptcy. I gestured toward the living room. "Sit down, Dad. I think it's time we had an honest conversation." He sat on my leather sofa, looking small and lost among the expensive furnishings. I remained standing, looking down at him for the first time in my life. "3 years ago, you called asking for help with a credit problem," I began. "Do you remember what you said? You work in banking or something, right? Like you weren't even sure what I did for a living." He nodded quietly. "Do you know who guaranteed that $4.2 million credit line? Who put their personal money on the line so Loxley Motors could expand?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. I could see understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. The pieces were starting to click into place. I walked to my home office and returned with a folder. Inside were the guarantee agreement with First Continental Bank, signed by Blackstone Ridge Partners LLC, and the operating agreement for Blackstone Ridge, showing me as founder and managing partner. Finally, he understood. For 3 whole years, I had quietly kept every single bank paper, every statement, every document that showed I had paid money to keep our family business alive. I had promised the bank that if anything went wrong, I would cover it. I had risked my own money to make sure the family could continue, even when they didn't realize it. And finally, after all those years, I decided it was time for the truth. I sat down with Dad, papers in my hands, and I said, "Me? The kid you always said was a failure? The son who couldn't do anything right? I risked $4.2 million of my own money, so Soren could buy 2 more car dealerships, and so you could tell everyone about the Loxley family legacy, like I didn't matter." Dad's face went pale. He picked up the papers with trembling hands, looking at them like he hoped they were a trick. "This can't be real," he whispered. "You don't have this much money. You just work some office jobs. Blackstone Ridge Partners has $180 million. But you? You don't have anything near this." I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Dad, we help companies with loans, money problems, and business planning. Big companies hire us too. Last year alone, we made $14 million. My own money is about $23 million. I've quietly built one of the most successful private capital firms in the Midwest while you told everyone I was a failure." The papers slipped from his hands and scattered across the coffee table. He just stood there, staring at the floor. I continued, my voice steady. "For 3 years, I've quietly supported the family business. I've paid guarantee fees totaling over $380,000. I put my reputation with the bank on the line for a business I had no ownership in. And every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every family gathering, you stood up and told everyone I was a disappointment. You said I had built nothing. That Soren was the success story, and I was the cautionary tale." I took a deep breath. "Do you know the worst part? I let you humiliate me in front of the whole family because a small, pathetic part of me still wanted your approval. I thought that if I helped enough, if I sacrificed enough, eventually you would see me as more than a disappointment." Dad began crying. Actual crying. Tears ran down his face, his shoulders shaking. I had never seen my father cry before, not at his own mother's funeral, not when Soren got married, not ever. And now, here he was, sobbing in front of me, realizing what had been hidden from him all these years. "Zevrian," he said quietly, "I didn't know. You didn't want to tell me." I interrupted him. "You decided who I was when I was 14 years old. You wrote me off as a disappointment because I didn't want to work on the car lot like Soren. You never looked closely enough to see what I was actually building, because that would have meant admitting you were wrong. And Thorian Loxley Sr. is never wrong." Dad's voice broke as he asked, "What do you want? Tell me what I have to do to fix this, to save the business." I leaned forward. "I want you to understand that my silent support is over. No more secret guarantees, no more hidden money. If Loxley Motors survives, it survives openly, and everyone must know exactly who made it possible." "Fine," he said. "Whatever you want. Just please tell me." I handed him my terms. "I want a formal equity stake in Loxley Motors, a 25% share of the business, proportional to my money contribution. I want a seat on the board of directors and a public announcement acknowledging that I'm the primary capital partner. And Dad, no more disappointing comments. No more comparisons to Soren. At family gatherings, treat me with the same respect you'd show any investor worth $23 million. Not as a failing son, but as a business partner. He was quiet. Very quiet. I could see the thoughts racing through his mind. His precious legacy, the family business his father had started, would now be partially owned by the son he had written off as worthless. The gravity of it seemed to weigh him down like a heavy blanket. There's one more thing, I continued. These are fair market terms for the capital I'm putting in. Most investors would ask for more, given the risk. I'm offering you family terms while requiring you to acknowledge that I am, in fact, family. Dad stood slowly, like a man twice his age. He walked to the window, staring out at the lake with his back to me. I've been a terrible father to you, he said quietly. Yes, I said. You have been. I don't know how to fix that, he admitted. You can start by signing the partnership agreement my lawyer will send tomorrow. The rest will take time. I'll sign it, I said. And Dad, I want you to really understand. I'm not asking for this to punish you. I want you to finally see me, to acknowledge me, to treat me as someone who has always mattered, even when you couldn't see it before. The next morning, the news announced it to the world. Locksley Motors had formed a strategic partnership with Blackstone Ridge Partners. The article detailed the capital restructuring, the new credit facilities I had arranged, and the 25% equity stake that made me the second-largest shareholder in the family business. Soren, my older brother, took it hard. He had spent his whole life believing he was the successful one, the chosen heir, the son who mattered. Learning that I had been silently keeping the family business afloat was a huge shock to his identity. At our first board meeting, he looked at the financial reports I had prepared and said, I don't understand. You could have done anything. You had the capital, the connections. Why did you help us? I smiled gently and said, because you're my family, even when you didn't deserve it. He paused for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, I've been a lousy brother. Yes, you have, I said. But now we can change that. We're not best friends yet, and maybe we never will be, but we can be honest with each other. That's something we've never been before. Now, Soren actually calls me to ask advice about financing, about expansion strategy, about things he used to think he knew better than anyone. And I answer, not because I need his approval anymore, but because that's what partners do. Because that's what families should do, even when it is complicated. Dad has changed too. That Christmas, held at the same estate with the same 12-foot tree, he made a toast that almost made me spill my scotch. To my sons, he said, raising his glass. Both of them. Soren, who built Locksley Motors into an empire, and Zevrian, who made sure that empire had the foundation to stand. I realized in that moment that my father finally saw what I had been building quietly all these years. Soren raised his glass to me in a real salute this time. Not mocking, not competitive, but a true acknowledgement from one business partner to another. My mother was crying into her napkin, the kind of crying that comes from decades of regret finally catching up. Celine, our cousin, looked like she might faint from the emotional weight of the moment. And me? I smiled. A real smile, not the polite mask I had worn for 35 years. I wasn't performing for anyone. I was just there to acknowledge my place in the family in a way I had never been allowed before. Blackstone Ridge Partners continues to grow. We crossed $300 million in assets under management last quarter. I've been invited to speak at 3 industry conferences about structured finance strategies. I've started mentoring young analysts who remind me of myself. Quiet, overlooked, more interested in understanding systems than in playing office politics. The ones who sit in the back of meetings and see everything while saying nothing. I tell them, never let anyone define you. Build in silence. Let people underestimate you. The best opportunities come to those who are not seen as threats. And when the time comes, and it will come, make sure they understand exactly who built the foundation they are standing on. The lesson I learned from my father the hard way is this. Some people will never see your value until it's taken away. They need to feel the absence before they can appreciate the presence. I was the family disappointment for 35 years. Now I am the family's largest external investor, sitting on the board of the business that bears my name, watching my father learn to be proud of both his sons instead of just one. Sometimes, late at night, I think about what would have happened if Dad had never made that Christmas toast. If he had simply ignored me as usual instead of publicly acknowledging me, would I have withdrawn the guarantee? Would I have ever told them the truth? I honestly don't know. Maybe I would have kept hiding forever, silently supporting a family that didn't see me, hoping for approval that would never come. Maybe that disappointment speech was the best gift my father ever gave me. It was the final push I needed to stop being invisible. Was it worth $4.2 million and 3 decades of invisibility? Maybe. Ask me at next year's Christmas dinner. Because now I am seen. I am respected. And I finally know that family is not about who is loudest or who seems most successful, but about who shows up when it matters most, even when no one else notices. I've learned that life is not a race of applause. It is a long journey, and sometimes the quietest people are the strongest, the most reliable, the most capable. And sometimes the person everyone thought was a failure is actually the one holding everything together. I learned to let go of needing approval from the people who didn't see me. I learned to take pride in my work quietly, to let results speak louder than words. I learned that true respect is earned not by showing off, but by proving you are there when it counts. And now, when I sit at the family table, I no longer feel like a stranger. I no longer feel disappointed. I am Zevrian Loxley. Son, brother, investor, business partner. Someone my family can finally count on, someone my father can finally be proud of. And that smile I gave that Christmas? It isn't the last one you'll see. It's the first of many because for the first time in my life, I am not performing. I am not pretending. I am simply Zevrian. And that is enough.